Okay, well, Reggie, the Vikings' final stretch of practice at OTAs commences today. It wraps up June 3rd, then a few days off until veteran mandatory minicamp, June 7th to the 9th. I know you've been out to a few of these practices, and something I haven't heard a lot about that I'm just a little curious is the backup quarterback battle right now. We all know Sean Mannion returns as the clipboard king, a proven veteran in the league, there to help Kirk Cousins, really, and if you need him in a pinch, but we also know the Vikings used a third-round pick last year on Kellen Mond, a kid who lit it up under Jimbo Fisher. So he comes from a pro-style offense. He was a threat with his arm and his legs at Texas A&M. And versus some of the best competition in the country, he was named Senior Bowl MVP down in Mobile, Alabama's All-Star game. So I know Mike Zimmer kind of called him out to the media last year, said he's nowhere near ready last season as a rookie. But now he's got a year under his belt. Full offseason. He's with Kevin O'Connell, teaching him a new system. I'm just wondering, how close do you think this quarterback battle is for the backup job from what you've seen so far? How do both these guys look so far when you've been out there?
I think it's close. It's interesting. When I was out there last week, it was interesting to see both of those guys just kind of getting some work in after the session was over. You know, Mannion was just taking some time to put some extra throws in, you know, throwing it to the net, throwing to some of the equipment guys. And then, you know, Kellen Mond was out there really getting after it with, you know, some of the coaches and some supporting players were out there, you know, helping them out, catching some passes from them. And, you know, the coaching staff so far has been pretty complimentary of Kellen after, you know, seeing him out there for a couple weeks. And so I think, you know, the upside for Kellen Mond is much more. I think at this point, you know what you're going to get from Sean Mannion. You know, that game against Green Bay when Cousins was out and they needed that, and that was the performance they got from Sean Mannion, that was rough. That was kind of brutal to watch. And I think at this point, you know what you're going to get from Sean Mannion. He's a veteran. He, you know, is going to know the offense, you know, front and back, kind of like an extension of the coach out there. But just as far as like being able to get this team in position to actually win football games, I'm not really sure that he's the guy for that. But when it comes to Kellen Mond, the upside is great. You know, I think one of the biggest things about him, you know, he played in that pro-style offense with Jimbo Fisher, but, you know, I think the book coming out on him was, can he be accurate enough at the NFL level? Can he be consistent enough to actually will a team to win a football game, to make plays? You know, he's athletic. He's going to be able to kind of move around out there. He gives you a little bit something different than Kirk Cousins does. But the issue is how much can he mature? How much can he improve at the NFL level? And it was tough to see Mike Zimmer really just kind of poo-poo on him last year. Really just didn't give him a chance. Really didn't even like, I don't know, like I was not with the open bashing that he did of Kellen Mond. Like that couldn't have done good things for his confidence. And now you see a little bit more of a pep in his step, you know, with this new coaching staff who are giving him a chance and want to see what he can do. And I think you're kind of seeing him respond to that early on. And so I'm interested to see how he battles in training camp and really just kind of pushes Sean Mannion for that backup spot. But I think it's going to be interesting to see.
I don't know much, but I do know this. After watching Mannion versus the Packers, like you said, in Lambeau last year, lose 37-10. In fact, not score a touchdown, by the way, until they were down 30-0 deep in the third quarter.
Brutal.
I promise you, a lot of fans are thinking, no way Mond can be, you know, any worse than that performance if that's the competition. So going to be a lot of eyes on that backup battle throughout the rest of OTAs and, of course, training camp starting in just a handful of weeks. I think the big thing that you highlighted, it's a new system, a pass-happy system, quarterback friendly, working with Kevin O'Connell. This is the fresh start, a young quarterback drafted in the third round needed. So all eyes will be on Mond for sure in that backup competition. Okay, so ESPN's Bill Barnwell
Hmm.
ranked every NFL team's offseason from worst to first. The Vikings landed smack dab near the middle at 17, and Barnwell had some interesting things to say about Kwesi's first offseason as GM, noting the solid addition of Jordan Hicks on the cheap, Harrison Phillips, za'darius Smith, of course, retaining core guys we know, Danielle Hunter, Patrick Peterson. When it came to the draft, mixed reviews saying the good news was it did seem they added 3 instant starters, Lewis Seen, Andrew Booth Jr., and of course Ed Ingram, but he wasn't huge on trading with division, specifically gifting the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, Christian Watson in the second round. The biggest criticism, though, came in these two aspects. One, he didn't love the contract extension to Kirk Cousins, and more so the layout of the deal. And two, just in a broader sense, it never felt like Kwesi had a good feel of direction of where he wanted to take this team. He didn't commit to either winning now and going all in with some key aging veterans like Harrison Smith, Kendricks, Thielen, Cousins, etc. But yet he didn't really go full rebuild and tear the whole thing down. Instead, taking more years and kicking the can down the road on those same veterans, a Thielen, Cousins, Harrison Smith contract extension. So all in all, Reggie, they ranked 17, not the end of the world, kind of, again, smack dab in the middle. In comparison, even the Lions ranked 27th, the Bears ranked 23rd. So could be worse. Agree or disagree, though, with Barnwell's rankings and just your overall thoughts on the article?
It's tough because, I guess Kwesi kind of characterized it as a competitive
Yeah,
rebuild.
right.
Like they're simultaneously building for the present and the future, which is just like, I don't know if you can do both, you know. But I think what was tough was the situation that Kwesi was handed over. And I think you saw what his thought process was when you got to the draft. Like him trying to give value, him trying to get as much as possible to kind of help fill out the depth of the team and kind of help, mold the team into a younger direction, starting with the draft. But I think it was tough kind of taking over when he did because he had a lot of decisions to make that really weren't going to help the Vikings right away. And so I think what he decided was, okay, well, since we kind of are tied to a lot of these players already, how about we just go ahead and just kind of go all in and see what we can get out of this season. And then I think maybe after this upcoming season, that's when you maybe evaluate like, okay, do we want to keep this band together or do we want to blow it up? And I think, a lot of fans were like, look, we've seen, this team max out with the guys that are there already. Blow it up and start fresh and build something new, build another type of a bully. And I think what's tough about that is Kwesi is just like, well, maybe with a new regime, maybe with, some different coaching and a different culture, maybe we can pull a little bit more out of these players than was being pulled in the previous coaching staff. And so I think really what this shows is that their confidence in themselves in being able to do it. And quite honestly, like looking at what the team has done, I think it really inspires a lot of confidence from, position by position standpoint that they can actually do something. You mentioned, getting guys that are instant starters like Seen and Booth, and then on the other side with Ingram. And then you mix in some of the new guys with some of the guys who were already there, and you're like, this might be a pretty good football team. And so I think what you saw was Kwesi turn something that could have been a negative into a positive because, okay, say you move on from Danielle Hunter. Say you try to move on from Kirk Cousins. You're going to have all this dead money on the cap now. And now also you aren't going to have those players. So, like, the team is not going to be all that good. And I think the decision was made like, okay, well, since we are tied to some of these players, let's try to get the most out of them. Danielle Hunter was not extended, as he comes back from this injury. I think that's pretty telling. Mm-hmm. So they're going to let him play out the deal, for what we've seen so far, things could change. They could see him in training camp and be like, oh, yeah, we want to re-sign him to a long-term deal. But they didn't do that for him. They signed, Za'Darius Smith. I think when it was looked at the contract like as a whole, it was one that they could get out of, immediately if they, don't work out with with the signing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what is interesting is like you've got, you kick the can on Kirk Cousins down, another year. And I think, there's going to be a situation where you can kind of get out of that as well in the near future. And I think what's been interesting is, they've been smart with some of these deals that they've made that, allows them to maybe go full rebuild if it doesn't work out. But I think all that we've seen and all of the energy that is around this team and with the coaching staff and the new regime, I do believe that they feel that they have some pieces in place to actually contend this year. And I'm interested to see how far they can take it.
To most people, Kwesi's the boss. He's the GM. He's the guy you look up to and you got to answer to. But people forget, Kwesi's got a boss too. And Mark and Ziggy Wilf, the owners, saw all those close games last year.
Yep.
How many? 10, 11, 12? Down to the wire. One-score games. And
yep.
Yeah, they beat the Panthers and maybe another one in there. But for the most part, the Vikings the ball did not bounce their way in the majority of those games, but they were competitive. And I think Mark and Ziggy Wilf had an asterisk by the hiring of Kwesi and said, listen, you're going to get the job. It's all yours. It's your team to run. But there's too much potential here. There's too much of a core foundation, a nucleus of great talent. And I'm not going to give you the green light to do full rebuild. So Kwesi took that for what it was worth, obviously. And I tend to agree with them, to be honest, because, again, you look at all the one-score games, and there is a great tight core nucleus of young, but a mix of veteran talent as well. Obviously, so much of this game comes down to the quarterback, but how many elite quarterbacks are out there? 7, maybe.
Right.
So, I mean, you got 23, 25 other teams trying to consistently find that good quarterback play. Kirk Cousins, obviously in the top upper half of the NFL quarterback. So that's Bill Barnwell's at least take on the Vikings offseason. Teams 32 through 17, I believe, were released first. So the rest is coming out this week. No Packers on the list. So they're obviously in the upper half, according to Barnwell. We'll check on that later in the week.